Andrew Marvell, The Definition of Love. My love is of a birth as rare as 'tis for object, strange and high. It was begotten by despair upon impossibility. Magnanimous despair alone could show me so divine a thing, where feeble hope could ne'er have flown, but vainly flapped its tinsel wing. And yet I quickly might arrive where my extended soul is fixed. But fate does iron wedges drive, and always crowds itself betwixt. For fate with jealous eye doth see two perfect loves, nor lets them close. Their union would her ruin be, and her tyrannic power depose. And therefore her decrees of steel us as the distant poles have placed, though love's whole world on us doth wheel, not by themselves to be embraced. Unless the giddy heaven fall, and earth some new convulsion tear, and us to join, the world should all be cramped into a planisphere. As lines, so love's oblique may well themselves in every angle greet. But ours so truly parallel, though infinite, can never meet. Therefore the love which us doth bind, but fate so enviously debars, is the conjunction of the mind and opposition of the stars.
Hello friends, Notes on English Literature, 16th and 17th century poetry, selected poems of Andrew Marvell. The definition of love, brief questions with the answers. Brief questions 1 to 23. Question 1. What is the nature of the poet's love in the poem, The Definition of Love? And so the love between the poet and his beloved is perfect and divine. As perfect love always remains unfulfilled, the poet regards it as the child of despair and impossibility. Question 2. How could the poet understand the divine nature aspect of love? And so frustration in love could make the poet understand the divine nature of love that he had been denied by the jealous fate. Question 3. Why does the poet term his despair as magnanimous? And so the poet's sense of frustration has aroused in him a kind of generosity which aided him to recognize the divine nature of love. So he has termed his despair as magnanimous despair, which means high-souled, noble despair. Question 4. How does Marvell define his utter frustration in love? And so the poet has defined his utter frustration in love as magnanimous despair. Question 5. What is the role of hope in the poet's love affair? And so hope has been compared to a bird having gaudy wings but not having the required strength to fly high enough. The poet's hope, being weak, could never have touched the heights attained by despair, nor had any promise of fulfillment. Question 6. What is the meaning of the expression, my extended soul is fixed? Answer. The poet's true love has resulted in the expansion of his soul, which is fixed with the soul of his beloved. Question 7. What has prevented the union between the poet and his beloved? Answer. The indefinable fate has prevented the union between the poet and his beloved through its complicated policy of separating them from each other. Question 8. How does fate create obstacle on the way of the union of the two lovers? Answer. Iron wedge means a B-shaped piece of iron used to split wood or rock by being hammered to widen an opening or to keep two things separate. In the case of the poet's love, fate acts as a carpenter in order to bring about a separation between the poet and his beloved. Question 9. How does the fate control the love of the two perfect lovers in the poet's opinion? Answer: fate keeps Virgil upon the two perfect lovers with her envious eyes and impedes them to become close, as their union would announce the ruin of her despotic power. Question 10. How far are the lovers placed and by whom? Answer: as a result of the firm decision of fate, the two perfect lovers, the poet and his beloved, have been placed as far away from each other as are the two poles, the north and the south poles. Question 11. How does the poet imagine to be united with his beloved? And so the poet imagines some kind of colossal turmoil in the universe that might bring down the heaven upon the earth and would turn the world into a two-dimensional object from her spherical shape. Thus, when the world would achieve a planispheric form, then only they could be united. Question 12. What geometrical imagery does the poet use to show the nature of guilty or adulterous love? And so the poet compares the guilty lovers to the two oblique lines in geometry. As oblique lines can meet each other in all geometrical angles, so also only guilty or adulterous lovers can find the fulfillment of their passion. Question 13. Which geometrical figures are compared to the loves of the poet and his beloved? And so the loves of the poet and his beloved are compared to the two parallel lines in geometry. Such lines can never meet, even if they are stretched to infinity. Similarly, the poet and his beloved can never be united. Question 14. How does the poet define the love between his beloved and himself? And so the love of the poet and his beloved is only a meeting of the mind's souls, but can never take the form of a physical union. This love may be defined as the conjunction of the minds and opposition of the stars. Question 15. What is the central theme of the poem, the definition of love? Answer. To define or true love means the union of two souls but separation of two bodies. Question 16. What is the prevailing mood of the poem, the definition of love? Answer. Because of the repeated emphasis on the malice of fate, the prevailing mood of the poem is pessimistic, although there is a feeling of calm contentment at the end. Question 17. How is the poet's love begotten? And so the poet's love is the child of the marriage between despair and impossibility. Despair is the father and impossibility the mother of this love. Question 18. What may cause the ruin of fate? And so the union of the two perfect lovers may cause the ruin of the power of fate, because this union will set aside the supreme authority of fate. Question 19. What is the meaning of the phrase her decrees of steel? And so the phrase her decrees of steel literally means her firm and rigid decision. Here her refers to fate. Fate is regarded here as a feminine force, like that of an all-powerful queen whose decrees must be implemented. Question 20. What is the meaning of the phrase the giddy heaven? And so the phrase the giddy heaven means the unstable sky or the spinning planets of the universe. Giddy here means going round and round or revolving. Question 21. What are the three conditions for the fulfillment of the poet's love? Answer. According to the poet, the two perfect lovers can be united only if three marvels happen. First, the spinning spheres of the universe must lose their balance and fall flat. Second, the Earth's globe must be shattered by a convulsion and twisted out of shape. Third, the whole created world must be crammed into a plane. Question 22. What figure of speech is used in the term magnanimous despair? Answer: magnanimous despair is an example of oxymoron, a figure of speech in which two words placed side by side seem to have opposite meanings. Question 23. How does Marvel define his utter frustration at love? Answer: the poet has defined his utter frustration in love as magnanimous despair. Thank you, friends, for watching my video.